We'll begin tonight with that story out of Brunswick County that has been drawing your clicks online all day today. Officers responded to a call on President Drive in Boiling Spring Lakes this afternoon. That's where we talked to a family who says officers shot and killed their son. News at 10 reporter Casey Cunningham joins us in the studio with what we know so far. Casey?
Craig, as soon as I got to the scene, I talked to a family who say their 18-year-old son, Keith Vidal, was shot by police. They say they called police to get some help with their schizophrenic son who was having a bad day. But they tell me they never imagined it would end like this. Mark Wilsey says the victim is his son. He said he and his wife, Mary, have had to call the police several times for help in getting their son to the hospital so he can get his medication adjusted for his mental illness. They say police tased their son twice and had him restrained, but that's when they say one officer said, "We don't have time for this," and shot their son right in front of them. They say their son was holding a small screwdriver but was not a threat to police. Right now, they have questions for police.
Why this cop killed my son in cold blood? There was no reason to shoot this kid. You talk to the kid, you don't shoot him, you don't kill him. So now, our son's dead because these people haven't got time to talk to a kid for 10 minutes.
Details are limited from investigators at this point, but we know District Attorney John David was on the scene. David says he, along with the BSL police and Southport police, have asked for an outside investigation. They tell us the SBI is now investigating the case. We'll keep you updated with anything we find out on foxwilmington.com. Reporting in the studio, Casey Cunningham, Fox Wilmington News.
I'm extremely upset. Showed no remorse, shot my kid like it was a dead dog on the road.
Had no remorse.
Criminals are treated with more dignity.
I couldn't even go see my son. Today, I still have not seen my son.
Mary Wilsey says a police officer murdered her 18-year-old son Sunday afternoon. Several departments responded to their home in Boiling Spring Lakes after they got a call for help. Keith Vidal suffered from schizophrenia. His parents say several officers helped in the situation before one officer from Southport arrived who tased Keith, then shot him. District Attorney John David says he cannot comment since the SBI is looking into the shooting. David planned to speak with Vidal's family today after a news conference with reporters. Now, investigators really are not releasing a lot of details on the circumstances and what happened inside the house in Boiling Spring Lakes. But we're digging deeper, looking to get those answers. Fox Wilmington's Craig Reck tonight takes us through the 911 call and the radio traffic from emergency responders.
It starts as a call for help from Keith Vidal's family.
We have a son that has schizophrenia, and he's not doing very good. We got to get him someplace.
His stepfather says this kind of thing has happened before, but the teen's mother is still worried.
He wants to fight his mother, or he's got a screwdriver. He's just, he's not doing good. She's scared to death of him.
Officers arrive on scene. For more than 10 minutes, they report back that everything is okay. 10-4. Then Unit 104 from Southport shows up and the situation changes within 1 minute and 10 seconds, according to the 911 report.
I don't know if you've been advised or not, but shots fired. I've had to defend myself against this subject.
The family is shocked.
Now tonight we know one officer with the Southport Police Department, a Detective Brian Vassy, is on administrative leave because of the incident. The police chief, though, would not confirm if Vassy is the one who pulled the trigger. Stay with Fox Wilmington. We'll continue to dig to find answers and bring you any new details as soon as they happen on the air and on foxwilmington.com. A little more than 48 hours now after the shooting on Sunday in Boiling Spring Lakes, the police chief of that community has cleared his officers of any wrongdoing from the shooting of a teenager. A state investigation is underway after an officer shot and killed Keith Vidal. Vidal's parents said he was suffering from a schizophrenic episode at the time it happened. Tonight we've learned the officer who did the shooting has hired an attorney. WECT's Ben Powell spoke with the attorney today, who promised a different perspective on what happened. Ben?
John, attorney James Payne invited us down to his office in Charlotte because he said that he wanted to provide a different perspective on what happened. But when we got there, he refused to answer most of our questions.
Do you think that Detective Vassy was in the wrong?
Well, I can't comment on anybody's name. Can't do that.
James Payne would not even confirm that he is representing Detective Brian Vassy from the Southport Police Department. Vassy was placed on paid administrative leave for his involvement in the Sunday shooting that killed 18-year-old Keith Vidal. Through our own investigation of the 911 calls and radio traffic, we've learned that officers arrived on scene and for 14 minutes they reported that everything is okay. Then Unit 104 from Southport showed up and the situation changed within 1 minute and 10 seconds, according to the 911 report.
I don't know if you've been advised or not, but shots fired. I've had to defend myself against this subject.
There has not been any official word that Vassy fired the shot that killed Vidal, but the Southport Chief of Police confirms that Vassy was the driver of Unit 104. In a press conference on Tuesday, District Attorney John David would not go on the record with his account of what happened. The family of the victim is calling it a cover-up.
It must be funny to them that they killed a kid, an 18-year-old kid. See this kid? This is my son. This is my flesh and blood that they murdered.
But Payne still maintains that his client should be cleared of any wrongdoing.
Law enforcement officers, being trained as they are often confronted with scenes or circumstances that turn violent in an instant. So we can't draw conclusions based upon however many, 70 seconds I believe you said.
The family of the victim tells us they've hired a team of lawyers too. They plan to press criminal charges against the officer who they say killed their son in cold blood. Reporting live, Ben Powell, WECT News.
Keith did not have to die.
The community of Boiling Spring Lakes gathered to march together to raise awareness of mental illness. Keith Vidal's family tells me he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and he was not alone in his struggle.
For this young boy to die was just completely preventable and wrong, and it happens way too much.
The march ended at Keith Vidal's home, the same place where he was shot and killed by police. That's where his family and friends remembered him with a candlelight vigil. Keith's family and friends describe him as fun, outgoing, and wonderful as a brother, a son, and musician. Now they say heaven has its own drummer.
And there's nothing that's ever going to make it better. He's not coming back. I mean, this is the only thing we have left of Keith, and I'm going to do what Keith wanted to do. I'm going to go to the shows he wanted to go to. I'm going to do the things he wanted to do just because it's Keith and he doesn't get to do it.
Vidal's family and friends released hundreds of balloons into the air. Now, when a person finds a balloon and calls the number inside, they will hear Keith's story. Another way to make people aware of mental illness outside of Boiling Spring Lakes.
Don't just stand there. Don't just stand idly by and let something like this happen so close to you. It could happen to you.
He's not a police officer anymore. He's a murderer. He's a criminal.
The family of a teenager shot and killed by a Southport police detective is talking tonight to WECT.
Tonight, Brian Vassy faces a charge of voluntary manslaughter in regards to Keith Vidal's death. And he has less than 20 hours to turn himself in. WECT's Casey Cunningham has been following these developments all day and breaks down what led to Vassy's indictment, how the family feels about the charge, and what's next in the case. Casey?
I spoke with District Attorney John David today. He says a case this controversial needed to go to the grand jury so a community could decide on the charges for Brian Vassy. This is the scene from 1 month ago today as 18-year-old Keith Vidal was shot and killed in his home. His family says he was suffering from a schizophrenic episode. They called police for help. Officer Brian Vassy from Southport, the third officer on the scene, arrived and shot Vidal, claiming self-defense. A grand jury calls it voluntary manslaughter.
The grand jury, which is the community, in their collective wisdom, determined that he should be charged with voluntary manslaughter. It is a decision which we accept which we agree with, and it's the charge that we'll be moving forward with.
The jury had 3 options: second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, or no charge at all. Keith Vidal's father, Mark Wilsey, says they're happy with the charges and they look forward to their day in court.
We are happy. We are going to have our day in court. This man is going to go to jail for killing our son.
District Attorney John David said in a rare situation, Brian Vassy himself presented his own case to the court.
I cannot think of a more fair process and a better airing of ideas for the jury's consideration than to have the person who is accused of a crime himself to be present before the grand jury.
Judge Jack Hooks gave Vassy a $50,000 bond, half of what David requested. He also got 48 hours to turn himself in to the Brunswick County Jail.
The minute he pulled that trigger, he's not a police officer anymore. He's a murderer. He's a criminal. And he should have been treated accordingly. That's the only thing we were unhappy about.
Online publication Port City Daily was the only media source in the courtroom. According to its website, District Attorney John David said Vassy appeared to be in a bad mood that day and reportedly said he didn't have time for this. We expect to hear from Vassy's attorney James Payne sometime tomorrow about a press conference or a statement. Now, also late this afternoon, we learned Southport police are meeting to discuss Vassy's employment. He has been on administrative leave since the shooting last month. Reporting live in the studio, Casey Cunningham, WECT News.